ما بنا قدموا بنا حل مدافنا ما بنا ينبلي أبي عملي سهد ربا إنك السيمودا ما بنا ينبلي أبي عملي سيتنا يسيحولي
كند مريت كويني كند خبور حزبي كند خبور حزبي كند خبور حزبي كند ولودوتات كندنا أصحابي كندنا أصحابي كندنا أصحابي عدلكم وفيكم زمزحكم عدلي زمزحكم عدلي زمزحكم عدلي أنتم تقعدتي أنتم مقعدتك كبرتها بلك كبرتها بلك أنت تقعدلي أنت تقعدلي أنت تقعدلي أنت تقعدلي أسمعكم حولتي أبغزي زي بالي أبغزي زي بالي أبغزي زي بالي أنا ونايد اليوم نعقم زي دلي نعقم زي دلي نعقم زي دلي أنتم سب تاريخي أنتم سب تاريخي أنتم سبت مالي أنتم سبت مالي أتت عمي أتغد معامي أتغد معامي أتغد معامي أستنتن اللي حسب ليلومي حسب ليلومي ذكر الليلومي دك عمي دك غد معامي دك غد معامي دك غد معامي أستنتن وهم ذكر وملومي ذكر وملومي نبي غيوم لومي أنا برمريحة رواد ساقرت رواد ساقرت رواد ساقرت دباب صندق إريتريا سحلت إريتريا سحلت إريتريا سحلت تعمل حلون ريمن حمق زي الحالت حمق زي الحالت حمق زي الحالت نبر حات عبدبو كل حزي تنبرت كل حزي تنبرت كل حزي تنبرت كبرت يا حبلي كبرت يا حبلي ناي كبرات كبرات ناي كبرات كبرت أبكي خبرو بعل ورك رفرف بعل ورك رفرف بعل ورك رفرف زنان بعل زنان لعليكم زي حلف لعليكم زي حلف لعليكم زي حلف تاريخ دو يتفن ترفق حلف ترفق حلف ترفق حلف تاريخ دو يتعلق تاريخ دو يتعلق انت رفوق نسافر انت رفوق نسافر أتت عمي أتغد معامي أتغد معامي أتغد معامي أستنتن اللي حسب ليلومي حسب ليلومي ذكر الليلومي دك عمي دك غد معامي دك غد معامي دك غد معامي أستنتن وهم ذكر وملومي ذكر وملومي نافي غيم لومي دكنت معامي دكنت معامي عسنتن وم ذكر وملومي ذكر وملومي نافي خيم لومي مهلا ويزلوم مهلا ولومي مهلا ولومي وقامني وبعل ويلاني بعل ويلاني وقامني وبعل ويلاني أنت ويلاني مهلا ويزلوم مهلا وكبري مهلا وكبري وقامني وقبزاي نبري قبزاي نبري وقامني وقبزاي نبري زانتا سمالي دك عمي دكت معامي دكت معامي دكت معامي عسنت نوم ذكر ولومي ذكر ولومي نافي خيم لومي مهلا ويزلوم مهلا ولومي مهلا ولومي وقامني وبعل ويلاني بعل ويلاني وقامني وبعل ويلاني أنت ويلاني مهلا ويزلوم مهلا وكبري مهلا وكبري وقامني وقبزاي نبري قبزاي نبري وقامني وقبزاي نبري زانتا سمالي
Salamata guys, kamay kanihum. You can hear me now. Audio is back. Kamay kanihum. Can do solo. Ane abzaate moderate gabr nomi b'Tigrinya, and in the English we're going to talk to our guest Thomas Mountain. He's back. Great to have you, and of course Matkal Misanalo. The topic is ብዙሕ ነገር ዘጠቃለለ እዩ ከም ትፈልጥዎ ለንቅነ ኣብ ኢትዮጵያ ዝካየድ ዝነበረ ቅልውላው እዚ ኩሉ ናይ ጂኦፖለቲካል ናይ ዓለማዊ ኩነታት ዝካየድ ዘሎ ኩሉ እሱ ከም ትሕዝቶ ሒዝና discussion ገቢና በእንግሊሽ Thomas, I just told everybody that the situation in the Horn of Africa region is getting a little tense by the minute. Also geopolitically the world is changing. We have you here as an expert and one of the few journalists who have been in Eritrea, based in Eritrea, and talking and writing and doing great things for the region, giving us good analysis. So with that said, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the article that you wrote, and let's also give you the medium to say hello to everybody.
Well, it's good to be back. I guess it's almost 2 weeks now that I wrote my most recent article entitled Ethiopia as Things Fall Apart, which is about the collapse of the US-backed Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed gangster's regime. I mean, reality is he's little more than the mayor of Addis Ababa because he's surrounded. He's got armed insurrectionists on all sides within 30 miles of the capital. He's lost control of at least 75 to 80% of the country. Since I wrote the article almost 2 weeks ago, things have actually gotten worse. I mean, something like 16 generals from the Ethiopian army have been sacked or run off or resigned or whatever, they've left. No longer. These are mainly from the Amhara ethnic group. So, I mean, to have 16 generals leave in that short a period of time means that Abiy's worried about a coup internally. Now, where things are in Ethiopia right now is that, you know, of course, the armed struggle is raging. I mean, Abiy's lost most of the country, and inflation's really bad. It just keeps going out of control, and so prices are going up. People can't afford for basic survival, and there's a foreign currency shortage, a severe foreign currency shortage. The businesses can't buy anything from outside, so they're having to shut down. A lot of foreign firms are literally packing up their factories and shipping them out. So, you know, the situation grows dire by the day. And on top of that, all the doctors are on strike. 165 doctors have been arrested for going on strike demanding a living wage. They can't survive on $65 a month with this huge inflation going on. And all the teachers have been on strike because they haven't been paid. I mean, there are teachers who never have been paid since they were first hired. This is not a new thing. It's been going on for a while now. The teachers not being paid. So the situation grows increasingly dire for the U.S.-backed Abiy Ahmed regime. So, what are we facing right now? I mean, it's right now we can't really ignore the fact that there's a war going on between Iran and Israel. The U.S.-backed Israeli regime attacked Iran. So there's a heavy exchange of missiles. And so, I mean, we're in the Horn of Africa is right next door to the Persian Gulf, where another critical choke point, which the Straits of Hormuz. And, we're in a Horn of Africa is a strategically critical part of the world too. I mean, what leaves the Persian Gulf, a lot of it goes to Europe through the Horn of Africa, through the Red Sea.
In saying that, do you feel like the dependency that was going on, the relationship that the regime in Ethiopia built with the United Arab Emirates, do you feel like that has a huge role in what's going on? Obviously it does, but I want to get your take on that, because I do believe that they depended heavily on that, and they abandoned a lot of the other relationships that they've had with other groups within the region.
Well, there's no question that the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, is playing a very destructive role in the Horn of Africa. I mean, they were the primary movers behind the coup in Sudan, attempted coup by Hemeti of the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. They're heavily involved in Ethiopia, arming Ethiopia to continue slaughtering the Ethiopian people. So the UAE has a cancer in the side of the African people, and they're what's propping up the Ethiopian regime. I mean, of course, the banksters in the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, had said, they're going to give another $260 million in loans to the Ethiopian government under Abiy Ahmed. So, I mean, Abiy's reality is in Ethiopia. Without the support of the UAE, Abiy would crash and burn a while back. But he is crashing and burning. They can't keep him going. Ethiopia is on the losing side.
That's why I brought it up, because I saw an article recently that said that after 90 days, of what's going on, chances are, the United Arab Emirates also has its own interest and has to kind of back off from what's going on. And if that happens, the Ethiopian government is already in crisis and might end up having a lot of issues. So with that said, I also want to see get the take on it from Metkal. Metkal, what do you have to say about this?
I mean, let's Thomas say most of the thing. I mean, United Arab Emirates, it have its own interest, and the interest is in order for them to advance, or even to keep the status quo as it is right now, you have to undermine the Horn of Africa, because the strategic importance of the Horn of Africa is greater than them. So that's why they create all these proxies. So I agree absolutely with Thomas.
Right.
Well, the Emirates almost seems like they want to have their own little mini empire. They're intervening in Somalia. They're attempting to. They've intervened heavily in Sudan, and they're losing. I mean, at this point, they were cut off from Chad. The word was that the Chadian generals have basically told the president of Chad they can't continue arming the Hemeti's forces. He's losing, and it's going to be a serious security problem for Chad. So what they've done is they've shifted to Haftar's forces in Libya, and they've come down into the border with Sudan and attacked the Sudan army and trying to establish supply lines to rapid RSF, to Hemeti's forces, the UAE-backed forces in Sudan, to keep them alive, because they're losing. I mean, Hemeti is losing. He's been losing ground, and it's just the arms, the drones especially, that the rapid support forces of Hemeti have been receiving from the UAE that's kept him alive, and some financial support too. So, but the UAE is a big problem. Of course, the United States is involved in all this too. They support the Abiy Ahmed regime, And ever since I think their big U.S. big coup was in the Pretoria Agreement, they forced down everybody's throat. And since then, the United States has been playing this sort of cancerous role as well. But UAE is the main problem right now. So I mean, but you said 90 days. So, I mean, if the Ethiopia was cut off completely from external funding, yeah, 90 days, because they've already major fuel shortages because they don't have the foreign currency to buy the fuel, which is it's sucking up their foreign currency reserves like it always has, because Ethiopia is entirely dependent on foreign fuel supplies. So, there are lines outside the benzene, the service stations for fuel, and it's crippling the economy because truckers can't make their loads, get their deliveries out and get mostly imported food and other supplies out to the rest of the country. So, again, things are falling apart in Ethiopia.
Right. In light of this, though, we also have seen some new developments in relations between Eritrea and certain groups of Ethiopia. What do you make of it, and how will that affect what's going on in Ethiopia in general?
Well, I caught a lot of flack for saying, that we know that Eritrea has been supporting the Amhara Fano Patriot Army and training them. It's been going way back to when the TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, attempted their U.S.-backed coup d'etat in 2000, and then they eventually attacked the Amharas, and the self-defense units, they call them Fano or Patriots, and Amhara, were forced to get their act together and start fighting to defend their people. So now Fano has consolidated their military and political wing into one united front, speaking in one voice, acting in one force militarily, and speaking in one voice politically. So Fano, has been the major player up to now. But just recently, we're hearing reports about high senior, well-known, established, popular Oromo politicians like Lema Magresa and Jawar Mohammed going to Asmara, Eritrea. I've been saying for over 20 years, all roads to peace in the Horn of Africa run through Asmara, Eritrea. And once again, this is the case where, it's clear that Eritrea sees that Abiy's going to fall and that somebody's going to have to replace him. And those people are going to have a very big problems trying to develop and maintain their new societies, because increasingly it's looking like Ethiopia, the empire, the Abyssinian Empire, which was only rechristened Ethiopia in the mid-20th century, historically was the Abyssinian Empire. It's the only indigenous African empire existing into the 20th century, known by the Haile Selassie's Makonans. That empire is falling apart. And I mean, for example, the Oromos, they're the largest nation in Africa with over 50 million people, the second most widely used language in Africa, Oromo. So, they are gnashing at the bit, wanting to get independence or at least get out of control by this gangster regime of Abiy Ahmed. And then the second largest is the Amhara, and they're already well on the way to running Abiy out of Ethiopia. I mean, they're the strongest military force in Ethiopia right now. And so, Eritrea is at this point trying to say, okay, look, reality is the Abyssinian Empire, the Ethiopian Empire is crumbling. And whether they're going to be able to keep the country united under the old structures, looks like that's not going to happen. It looks like increasingly like the empire is going to be torn apart, and there's going to be a series of new nations born in Africa with names like Oromia and Afar and Tigray and Amhara and so on and so forth. So these are, you're 120 million people in Ethiopia. It's not you're not talking about 1 million here and 5 million there. You're talking about 50 million here and 40 million there and 15, 20 million here in the Ogaden and the Somalis in the Ogaden, all these places. How is this going to become a feasible new countries? Are they going to work under umbrella leadership? Or, I don't know. And I don't have any of those answers, but I know that the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, under the leadership of Isaias Afewerki, known as now these days the Popular Front for Liberation, for Freedom and Democracy, they have a plan and they're working on it. And the top leaders are in and out of Asmara, and all the roads to peace in the Horn of Africa are running through Asmara. And the good thing is, Eritrea's got a lot of experience in this, and they got a very positive track record in bringing peace to us, to our Horn of Africa. And the deals that were mediated by the Eritreans, the consensus deals, are the ones that have held up the best. So what's going to come next after Abiy Ahmed is a 120 million person question.
That's a great way to analyze it, because I was going to get to that. In order for our audience to understand, whoever's watching, whether Eritreans or non-Eritreans watching, the context always matters. Eritrea has always fought for regional integration, regional peace based on mutual respect. And one of the things that we continue to see is the derailment of that through outside proxies, right? And so how do you put, you said all roads lead to Asmara, all roads to peace lead to Asmara, and EPLF and PFDJ and the people of Eritrea in general, we've paid dear price for this. And we continue to fight for the elimination of all the problems that the region has had for decades, right? How do you think Eritrea can play a role in terms of making sure that the disintegration of what could be a disintegration of the Ethiopian federal system is not coming to play?
Well, I don't think there's any preventing. I think it's gone too far. I mean, Awal Said sort of spoke openly. He's like the unofficial official voice of the Eritrean government. Awal Said says maybe Tigray is going to be an independent country. Whoa, first time we've heard that. So I think that's very significant. So, I think the Eritrean government's realizing that keeping this federation that was set up under this brutal imperialist regime, Abyssinian regime, carried out a genocide against the Oromos when they conquered them over 100 years, 150 years ago. I don't see it continuing. I think we're going to see a bunch of new countries. Somehow they're going to have to work together, and somehow we're going to have to keep extremist elements from coming in and destabilizing the place too much. The United States and UAE and all the rest of these people are going to try to come in here and make it impossible for the people to have a free, independent, self-sufficient countries that are not, can break the grip of the bankster IMF and World Bank regimes that put their country in debt bondage. So, there's a lot of big things. I mean, Ethiopia's got tens and 20s of billions of dollars in debt. It's going to have to be declared odious debt. They're not going to be able to pay this. This latest 260 million the IMF's giving to Abiy, he's stealing all of it. He's feathering his nest, and where's it going to be, Dubai or Abu Dhabi or where? Him and his fellow gangsters are, many of them realize that their days are numbered. I mean, Abiy's sort of sounding increasingly deluded and off. I mean, the comments he's making is like, is this guy for real? I mean, it's like, and of course the Western media is part of it all. The international media, Sputnik Africa, is saying ridiculous things about making it seem like, oh, Ethiopia's got the biggest airport in Africa and everything's fine and dandy. And Ethiopia is going to have a budget of $16 billion when they've only got, $4 billion a year coming in from coffee, cut flowers, and leather. That's it. How are they going to come up with another $12 billion to pay their bills? So, I mean, just ridiculous things being said. And the Ethiopians people are paying the price for it all. But, again, it's not a question of if, but it's a question of when Abiy Ahmed's going to fall. And it could come a lot sooner than many of us think.
So let me go back, okay? Ethiopia as a nation, like you said, after it became Ethiopia from being Abyssinia for many years, the leadership they've had there, starting from Haile Selassie and then going to the Derg regime and then going to the Wayane TPLF regime and then now to this, is it them running the show, or is there outside forces that dictate Ethiopia? So would you say Ethiopia is maybe another state of the Western civilization that has been used to kind of like destroy the region into not becoming peaceful. I mean, that's what it seems like. The trend clearly shows that. So let's talk a little bit about context. And I know there's a book also that came out recently, which I love a lot of people to read about. We'll get to that later, but let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, you could say legitimately that the Abiy Ahmed regime is a proxy regime of, the United States, the Western governments, because that's who's calling the shots. That's who's paying the bills. The UAE is part of that, in their attempt to build their own little mini empire. So the question is, where is Ethiopia headed? And we've got to take a look at the past to see, what's most likely going to happen. And but it's pretty dark and gloomy at this tunnel right now. But there's a light at the end of it, meaning that Abiy Ahmed is going to get run off. And so this war should come to an end. This internal conflict that's devastating the country, causing all these refugees, and diverting all this badly needed aid and monies and energy into feeding their people. I mean, Ethiopia's got 2-3 million displaced people that are starving, and another 2 or 3 million people that are just plain starving, and then there's massive malnutrition and hunger all across the country. And the media outside is saying, oh, they're growing their own grain and this and that, and it's like, oof, this big propaganda wave trying to say that everything is fine in Ethiopia. Overseas investors are coming in, and Abiy is seeing a stream of steady visitors from foreign countries. I mean, you've even got, it's something that's really disappointed and really hurt the Eritrean people, is to see that even Russia announcing they're giving weapons to the Abiy regime basically use to kill his own people. I mean, all of a sudden, a lot of us have serious questions about this Vladimir Putin, or do they really know what they're doing in Africa? Because, if you take, for example, what Sputnik Radio is putting out there, it's like, what planet does Sputnik Radio live on? It's just all propaganda. It's like, are Sputnik Radio a liars for hire like the Western media, just to prop up the Abiy regime, to be allowed to stay operation in Ethiopia? So, it's sort of like, Isaias has come out with a new book. Michel Colon has published this book, Interview with Isaias, the first time that's happened now, right? And, Isaias has talked about a lot of things. I think it's very important everybody read this book, and we're hoping it's the first in a series, because, whoa, Isaias is saying things there that I had no idea. I thought I knew what I was talking about. I'm going, ooh, Isaias is starting to tell us this real deal about what's been going on. And I think this sort of insight is going to raise a lot of our understanding about what's going on in the Horn of Africa. So, I recommend people get that book.
No, absolutely. And I think Michel Colon and Mohammed Hassan also has a part in it. Hopefully, we'll try to bring them back on this show and maybe talk to them a little bit about that.
Good
as well
idea.
when we get a chance.
Good idea.
But the one thing I want to say to you is this: it's a known fact for most Eritreans that some of those secrets that you say, they're not secret to us. We've been witnessing them. We've been learning about them. Even me, as a person who grew up within the Eritrean community, we learn about some of those perplexed situations that have been going on in our region, in our country. And we have always maintained the same value of peace and regional integration and maybe prosperous Horn of Africa. However, the West and the rest, most of the world, including, you mentioned Russia and other people, refuse to listen to us. Why can't they listen to Eritrea? Why can't they allow Eritrea to be the country that leads the way? Why is that a problem? Because at the end of the day, they're going to get worse than what they ask for. And that's the way I look at it. So,
Well, Abiy's going to run off. He's getting run off. He's going to flee. But if they don't capture him first, hopefully they'll capture him and bring him to justice. But he's too much of a coward to stick around. He's going to flee. He's going to blow dodge, and he's going to leave this big mess behind him. And all these promises and all this investments and loans and everything, all of a sudden they're going to have egg on their face. All these international people that are saying, oh, we're going to help Ethiopia, this and that. Putin made a point of really pushing to have Ethiopia part of BRICS. He's trying to get Ethiopia out of the Western orbit and maybe offer loans from the BRICS bank so Ethiopia doesn't have to be completely dependent on the banksters from the IMF and the World Bank, Western people, right? So, I think that's part of why Russia is looking at this big power thing. What is Eritrea, 4 million people? I mean, that's what always been the problem. It's a little country, even though Eritrea's influence is growing. I mean, the Sudanese people have all come out and openly said, boy, we really owe Eritrea for helping us out of this civil war and helping us, start to defeat this UAE coup attempt in our country. And, even the Somali people, they're very aware of the fact that Eritrea has done enormous things for them. So, I mean, right now, Eritrea is working really hard on building ties, people-to-people ties with the Ethiopian people. I mean, the Tigrayans and Eritreans dancing together after all the animosity and crimes being committed against Eritrea over the years, I think really shows the fact that there's a bright future for cooperation between the peoples, and the Eritrea's got the right attitude towards how to bring peace to the Horn of Africa. And not just the government, but the people themselves can see that we have to get along with our neighbors. We have to make peace with our neighbors. We have to try to educate our neighbors. I mean, I think Alem Seged Tesfaye has made a lot of really good points about how you've got to, stop taking them out. When they say these ridiculous historical statements about Ethiopia never being colonized and all these other things, which I still get a lot of these kind of responses. It's just absurdity. It's fantasy. But instead of getting angry and fighting with them, we've got to say, look, we've got to just be patient, educate them. Because what's the point in fighting with them? No, we've got to try to teach them the truth. It's going to take a while because from young children, they were brainwashed in the schools of Ethiopia with all these lies. I mean, in a way, it's almost like the Israelis, how they've been brainwashed with all these lies. Now, hopefully, the Ethiopian people are going to be a lot easier to bring up to speed, because I don't have any hope for the Israeli people.
Well, if you notice, every time this topic of peaceful relationship begins, we've always said it. Mutual respect. You have your borders, you have your boundaries, and then you start working towards peace. And all of a sudden, people like Abiy and the other groups of Ethiopians come and say, they're trying to push for the Red Sea access, and they're talking about how, there's going to be fears of a wider conflict in the Horn of Africa because we have no access to the sea, blah, 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 blah. It's a gung-ho thing, that they do to try and confuse the people, because the people of Ethiopia in general are very easily swayed by their political issues, And so with that said, what do you make of that? We didn't discuss that since we started the topic, which is, by the way, is a great conversation. And what do you make of this whole gung-ho about the Red Sea access and all that stuff?
Well, I've said this a number of times recently that, Ethiopia is not, the Ethiopian government can't even defeat basically a jumped up militia, Fano fighters, right? Fano, they don't even have tanks. So they're not a real army. So they can't even defeat them, even with all the help from the UAE. So to take on Eritrea, which already crushed the TPLF in 2020, 2021, when the TPLF was a large, well-armed, well-led, competently led or somewhat competently led military force. And now, Abiy Ahmed, they stopped training Amharas for their military, because every time they train them, as soon as they finish their training, the whole unit leaves with their weapons, probably going over to Fano. So, Ethiopia is in a situation where, all they can do is try to make their own population look anywhere else but what the real problem is. And they say patriotism is the last resort of scoundrels. And the Ethiopian regime is saying, oh, we're going to get back the Red Sea, and you've got to support us all, and we deserve it, and this is rightfully ours, and all this historical fabrications. And, and threaten violence and war. And it's scary to Eritrean people, because Ethiopia has invaded Eritrea a whole bunch of times, attacked Eritrea, and a lot of, we've got Martyrs Day coming up on June 20th, which is, a very profound holiday, because, 65,000 Eritreans died fighting for independence, and another almost 20,000 died in the TPLF attempt to recolonize Eritrea, Western supported attempt to recolonize Eritrea, 1998 to 2000, and then, even in 2020, when Eritrea had to move to crush the Abiy's invitation and request to crush the attempted coup, CIA-backed attempted coup by the TPLF, And then Eritrea had to intervene again when Abiy, under pressure from the Americans, pulled out of Tigray and allowed the TPLF to rearm and come back again. So twice Eritrea's had to reconvene. That means the blood of Eritrean martyrs continues to fertilize the struggle for freedom by the Ethiopian people. And I think that's sort of like, Eritrean people have paid so much blood for a little country. And I think that's why Martyrs Day on June 20th is so important to the Eritrean people. I was there for 15 years, and I spent 15 nights, every Martyrs Day night, marching through the streets of Eritrea, carrying our candles, commemorating the ultimate sacrifice made by Eritrean martyrs to bring freedom to their country and independence to their country. And it looks like maybe Eritrea is not going to have to do that anymore. I mean, maybe Eritrea will have to, I don't know, but we're all hoping that finally, with the end of Abiy, because we all thought Abiy was going to bring an end to all of this, right? In 2018, I was in Asmara with 100,000 Eritreans waving and cheering as Abiy drove through the streets. We were really happy. Everybody's ecstatic. And Abiy was saying all these great things about peace and recognizing Eritrea and everything. It was like, whoa, finally. And then Abiy turned out to be another gangster. So,
well, you mentioned the martyrs, and that's a very, very important day. And we're going to try to kind of give a little break to the audience. It's in English and B'Tigrinya Khman Kazarabi. I'll speak in Tigrinya as well. But before we do that, I wanted to, take a little moment to say that you mentioned the great author Alam Saga Tesfai, and this is the book that he wrote recently, 500 something, with context in it. And I really, really encourage every young person, every non-Eritrean person to read this, to understand. It's well researched, guys. It's an amazing book that was really needed to understand the bigger context of Eritrea. With that said, Solo, if you're listening to me, can you play the music video? We're making a premiere on this video for Martyrs Day that was put together from a poem that went 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Play Solo and let the people hear it. I think it's something that I put together. Let's go. Right.
Where the sun shines bright, Eritrea, our homeland, a beacon of light. Brave men and women fighting for a cause. They stood tall and proud, demanding their applause. 24 hours a day, every single week, justice and truth, it's our freedom they seek. With courage in their hearts, they took a stand for a land that's free. United we band. Eritrea, oh home of the brave, your spirit lives on in the hearts that you save. Shining like gold, you're our blessing divine. May we honor your martyrs, their legacy will shine. In 1991, freedom fighters rose, liberating our land from every wound and woes. They gave it all, didn't flinch, didn't shake. With blood on the ground for our freedom's sake. Oh, the tears that were shed, the dreams that they had, fighting for the dignity that we all should be glad. From the hills to the valleys, their names echo true in the story of our people, they'll always live through. Eritrea, oh hearts that you saved, shining like gold. You're our blessing divine. We honor your martyrs, Villega for eyes. Among nations of the world, you stand so tall. For justice and truth, you answer the call. In the struggle for peace, we won't forget. To the heroes we lost, we owe this debt. 24/7, your memory we keep. In the depth of our hearts, for you we will weep. With love and with honor, we'll carry the flame. Eritrea, our hope, will forever proclaim. Eritrea, oh home of the brave. Your spirit lives on in the hearts that you save.
All right. Thank you, Solo, for playing. That's the premiere, and we just wanted to break the ice a little bit. It's a very emotional feeling, you know. The Martyrs Day is very, very big for a lot of Eritreans. The work that we do, and we appreciate you, Thomas, because I know that you deeply have been involved with the Eritrean cause for a long time, and the fact that you always mention that also means a lot to us as a people. You said it best when you said, you know, people paid a huge price for this. So with that said, now tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the overall picture. What could be the next step?
Well,
how do we get prepared for what's
just a couple of words about your song. You ought to translate it and sing it in Tigray, because the Tigray beat is like this reggae beat, very similar. It worked perfect, and I mean, I think it's good it's in English to get it to a broader audience, but I mean, for Eritreans in Tigray, that song would be wicked. Okay, so
thank you.
The other thing is, like you say, you know, Eritrea now is facing sort of a breakthrough in economic conditions. I mean, all of these years of sanctions and war and drought and getting hammered, you know, and Eritrea is starting to come out of that now. I mean, they've got the Embadurho mine is actually starting production, and you know, the Harena mine, the satellite mine in Bisha, has been producing, and so now, you know, we've got some serious income coming in. The potash mine is supposed to start next year, so that's even more serious income coming in. So Eritrea will be able to really begin modernizing and developing their infrastructure, and, you know, upgrading their medical and educational and housing and everything else. I mean, there's been, you watching the news about Sierra Leone, about Burkina Faso, and everybody's been, oh, Burkina Faso this and Burkina Faso that. Yeah, what's going on in the Sahel is very positive, but it's only been going on for 2 years. Eritrea's been doing this for over 60 years. Okay, so
thank you for bringing that up. A lot of people, you know, even some people are doubting, why is all of a sudden Burkina Faso's leader on the spotlight when Eritrea has been doing this for years? So,
and not only that, but Burkina Faso gets, I mean, they nationalized, very good thing, they nationalized the gold mines 2 years ago, and the gold mines are bringing in $4 billion a year to Burkina Faso. I mean, that would be like Eritrea getting 800 million a year. Okay, so I mean, of course, they can do a lot of things with $4 billion a year. I mean, Eritrea have had 800 million a year. They could do a lot of things too. And now they've got some serious money coming in. You're going to see that happening. So, you know, my good friend Alistair Smith, who's spent over 20 years in Eritrea, you know, is with the Alpha Exploration Company. He was the one that explored the Ambadurho mine, and also the Zara mine. And now he's been one of those that helped uncover the Aburna mine in Kashbarka, the Alpha exploration mines, and in the Arab Nubian Shield, this big, rich potential mining zone in Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Sudan, even into Saudi. Alistair, who's spent 20 years in Africa before he came to Eritrea 25 years ago. Alistair says he's the one that said, look, he's been in Burkina Faso, he's been in Mali and all these other places. And he says, yeah, it's great that they're making lives better for their people, but they've been at it for 2 years. You got a role model in Eritrea that survived. He's not for sure that these guys are going to survive because they've got big enemies, serious enemies that are already trying to assassinate their leaders and sabotage their economies. So, 2 years is not a long time to say, hey, we're going to stake the future of Africa on. But Eritrea has been all these years and years, and the trials and tribulations of Eritrea has been nothing, way more intensive and long-term than anything that's been inflicted upon the people of the Sahel. So, why don't people look at Eritrea as a role model and say, okay, what is Eritrea doing? One of the things that they should be doing is looking at Eritrea in terms of food conservation, water conservation. Eritrea is building all these dams, micro dams, 700 and something over since independence, some huge water projects, huge. That's what they've got to start doing in these Sahel regions because they're being hammered by this mainly Western-caused climate disaster. So, they've got to start doing these things, not just building roads and hospitals and factories. They got to start providing food security and preparing for major droughts, which is what is going to be happening. It's happened in the past in the Sahel region. The Sahel is what we call the canary in the coal mine when it comes to climate disaster. The first place that got hammered by this Western-caused climate disaster was the Sahel, including Eritrea as part of the Sahel. The famous drought, Michael Jackson, We Are the World, 73, 74. Half of the people in that famine was Eritreans. The other half were Ethiopians. So, Eritrea has been hammered. The rest of the Sahel is going to be hammered. Eritrea has been preparing for this. Eritrea knows that's why, water conservation is food in the bank. Well, with water, you can irrigate. With irrigation, you can grow your food. You can break the historical dependence on rain-fed agriculture, which is no longer reliable because of climate disaster or climate change, what some people call it. So, Eritrea has got all these role models. All the, their educational system, building schools all over the place, building these barefoot doctors to treat malaria. Malaria is a big problem in the Sahel. So, how did Eritrea do it? I wrote 15 years ago, I wrote an article, Defeating Malaria, one mosquito net at a time, about how basically the Eritrea malaria prevention program, based on barefoot doctors going out and making sure everybody had mosquito nets and regularly retreated their mosquito nets so they continue to be effective. So, this is like, there's a whole bunch of things Eritrea can teach people, and it's almost like pulling teeth with some of these Africans. I've seen people that are friends of Eritrea and been to Eritrea and go to Kenya and talk about Malcolm X. Wait a second. Why aren't they talking about Isaias Afewerki? That's who Kenyans need to start studying, because look at Kenya. The country's in a mess.
Well, I got to tell you this, though, Thomas. I think the whole thread of example that was mentioned by the likes of Hillary Clinton, all that, Eritrea's thread of a good example starting to spread. I'm noticing a little bit of that going in certain parts of Africa. But you say something funny just now, because why is it that they don't want to admire the work that we do? Rather, instead, they try to demean us, to say that, this country is, like banana republic. It doesn't have economic power and this and that. But because it requires for you to go through trials and tribulations first in order to achieve something successful like Eritrea is doing right now. Eritrea can only go up now, while a lot of people are going down in this developing world, because Eritrea has always remained steadfast with what it's been doing in terms of development, right? So, for example, there was even a time when I worked on a World Bank documentary where the education system allowed their teachers to become clinicians so that they don't have children who get sick and small little minor things and they miss school and go to the doctor's office, that kind of thing. So they created small little clinics in small villages to and they invested heavily on that. The Eritrean Ministry of Information, Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education collaborated together. That was the first time something like that being done in Africa. It was a template, to say the least. However, what I want to say to you is, though, what do people have to go through in order to understand what Eritrea went through? Because, we're not here trying to glorify. We're trying to tell the truth. It's been going on. You've been writing articles about Eritrea, like you said, since 15 years ago. Okay, this article you talked about the malaria. We eliminated malaria a long time ago. Nobody wants to give you credit for that, though. Nobody wants to talk about all that stuff. They want to talk about what is wrong you're doing. They chase and they look and they try to, find what you're doing wrong. So with that said, I want you to give me a little bit of an overlook. And I know Metkala hasn't said much, but if you want to chime in, you're also available to chime in. You can chime in, but tell me a little bit about the thread of good example.
Well, the Human Rights Council, the United Nations General Assembly just voted in support of Eritrea in opposition to the human rights, the liars for hire at the Human Rights Council. It's been slandering and saying these nasty things about Eritrea for all these years. The tide is turning. Eritrea is breaking out of this Western imposed isolation, and Eritrea is reaching out and starting to do, good work in the broader community. So, it was 25 years ago this month, I think last weekend, 25 years ago, I published my first significant article about Eritrea, which was called U.S. Behind Invasion of Eritrea. And I published it at the height of the U.S.-backed TPLF invasion of Eritrea in June of 2020. And that was my first article, and I got a flood of emails thanking me from the Eritreans and a flood of emails hating me from mainly Poly-Tigrayans, right? But hundreds and hundreds of hate mails, but having more support. I think the Eritreans at that time, I was the first time I was able to. I was the voice in the wilderness. It was the only voice out there. So for years I worked hard. For example, Black Agenda Report. Glenn Ford became a supporter of Eritrea basically by reading my articles. In the beginning he'd read them, but he wouldn't post them. But I worked with other people around him and made sure that Glenn got the articles and he started reading them and he started publishing them. And now Black Agenda Report's a bastion of Eritrean support. So, this was like back in 2009, 2010. I've got articles I'm a columnist in Modern Ghana and Nigerian Voice. I've been almost 15 years in Modern Ghana, over 140 articles, spreading the word in West Africa about, the positive things Eritrea is doing, right? So, these are things that take a lot of work and a long time. And, you got to plug away at it. And you have your ups and downs and changes because independent websites come and go. And you have to rebuild trust and contacts with new editors. And, it's not easy. It takes a lot of energy and patience. I've been getting older. I don't have the energy and the patience so much. But, I'm starting to reach out more, trying to reach out more again because, Awel Said said, man, there's a big propaganda war being waged against Eritrea, and the Eritreans and the diaspora have to step up and start to push back. Okay, that means that you can't just be the isolated, insulated Eritrean community. You have to do outreach, and the Eritreans are starting to do that. You see these mayors coming out and congratulating Eritrea on Independence Day. There's got a lot of outreach that's got to be done. For example, Michelle Colon's book, his interviews with Isaias Afwerki. That's a great opportunity to explain to the world that Isaias isn't this evil guy they portray him to be. He's not some brutal dictator. It's the exact opposite. He's the man of the people. He's popular president. He lives a simple, basic life, and he's working hard his whole life to make life better for not just for the Eritreans, but for the people in the Horn of Africa. He's a Pan-Africanist at heart. So, Michelle's book is something you guys got to get back on the show and get people to push that book because it's in English and it's in other languages as well. So, if we could get that book out there and expose the world to Isaias Afwerki and the brilliance of Isaias, because I think very briefly at the Russia-African Summit, Isaias spoke and he caught a lot of people's attention. Damn, this guy's brilliant.
He did.
And it's like the first time they're hearing who Isaias is, because, you know, Isaias has been portrayed as this brutal dictator. I mean, you believe the people I've had fights with that calling Isaias a killer. I mean, remember what Navi Pillay from the UN was saying, Isaias kills his own people. And all these other people, it's like, all these years we fight with people. Okay, the tides turn. Now the time to do outreach. Okay, the young bloods out there and the YPFDJ and everybody else has got to start doing outreach, looking for. I mean, I had connections with Alex Coburn, the founder of Counterpunch. So Alex basically override the grifters that have taken over his website, Jeffrey Coburn and these other people, and published my articles about Eritrea and Sudan and other things. But with Alex's passing, and the grifters have now consolidated their complete control of Counterpunch. But in the meantime, I got over 120 articles on Counterpunch, which at one point is like 2 million readers a day. I mean, a month, 2 million readers a month. There's the largest radical left-wing independent site in English on the planet. So, I mean, that took work, but, you know, it paid off because it got the positive word about Eritrea out there. That's what's got to keep happening. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, would you say Eritrea and the way we've been fighting our struggle all those years, with you also being part of the solidarity to anti-imperialist movements, would you say that, you know, do you think finally now starting to get maybe a light at the end of the tunnel, where people are starting to understand in order to fight a battle, you really got to do grassroots, and you really got to do them country by country, people by people. I mean, it's a huge battle because you're fighting against a huge institution that's called imperialism, right? So would you say that Eritrea's example is what scares a lot of those media outlets?
Well, I say that a lot. The threat of a good example is Eritrea. I mean, because, you know, but again, people have to reach out to the Black American communities and other African communities and say, hey, look, can we recognize the positive things that's going on in Eritrea? And maybe your people can learn from them. And, you know, that sort of takes some patience and takes some kind of consistent plugging away with, you know, contacts and other people like that, you know, pushing the supporters of Eritrea outside to reach out to broader communities as well. Don't just stay in their own little Black Agenda report cliques and things like that. They got to reach out and talk about, you know, I mean, you know, like when I wrote about the defeating malaria one mosquito net at a time, now that reaches out to a whole lot of public health people outside of the political circles. You know what I'm saying? And the public health people are like, whoa, yeah. And I mean, I wrote about Bill Gates is using African babies as guinea pigs for his vaccines, malaria vaccines, and other things like that. And, you know, we don't need vaccines. We need just public health mosquito nets. These vaccines are scary because we don't know who made them.
Well, you got to see it clearly, and I think people fail to understand that. You have people like Tedros Adhanom running WHO, elected like in a very shrewd way, and all of a sudden, you know, he's with Bill Gates, and all of a sudden, the whole vaccine story becomes shady. Eritrea was able to stop the whole vaccination thing during the COVID. If you remember, we had our own plan, and we were able to kind of counter what happened. But what I'm trying to say is,
they did public health. They didn't need vaccines. In public health, they control the COVID thing.
Absolutely. And so with that said, though, how do you fight the battle when someone is running the show that you put in there, like a puppet that you put in there to dictate what goes on around the world? You know?
Well, you gotta. It's like, I mean, I found myself going back and looking on Google of anybody that published my articles over the last 15 years, and going back to some of these websites and saying, hey, look, you published me back in 2012. Here's my article about Eritrea. Here's my article about Ethiopia. You know, try to get back out there to the people that are open to hearing the truth, and through them, spread the word. It's a little bit at a time, but the Eritreans, we can do that. Eritreans can do that. It's just Eritreans have always been sort of like, nobody cares about us. You know, we have to do this ourselves. And it's true. Nobody cared about Eritrea. Eritrea had to do everything by themselves. Nobody helped Eritrea. Eritrea fought their 30 years armed struggle, and maybe other than Syed Barre in Somalia providing some diplomatic cover for Eritrea, which was very valuable, who else? Nobody helped Eritrea. Eritrea did this all on their own. Okay, so Eritrea is sort of like, yeah, we did it all ourselves. That's the only way it's going to work. But we're reaching out now. Eritrea, I mean, things are changing in Africa. The U.S. hegemony, Western hegemony, is being challenged now. There's a lot of people starting to say, "Whoa, we don't have to live the way we've lived. What's out there that's better? What's a good example?" Well, Eritrea is the threat of a good example. Why? Because Eritrea gets 40% of the profits they're making in the in the mining industry, and 50% in their potash, half. I mean, Tanzania's got the largest gold mine in the world, owned by Anglo American. Tanzania gets 10%. I mean, so threat of a good example. If the rest of Africa started getting 40, 50%, or like in Niger, just plain over taking over the mines, then that's going to be a big problem for the West, because even the French presidents were always saying, when France loses control of their African neo-colonies, that's going to put France back in the third world. So, I mean, France depends on Niger for their uranium. There's supposed to be something like a couple $100 billion of the uranium that the French want to exploit, or potential exploitation in Niger, hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, without that, French is not going to have, without their uranium, French is not going to have electricity. Their electricity grid's based on uranium, nuclear power. So, I mean, so there's a lot of people out there in the Western countries that are looking at Africa as, potentially threat to their control, the Western countries are able to bribe their people with a higher standard of living due to the super exploitation they carry out in the third world, particularly in Africa, because their super exploitation has been more limited in Asia and more limited in South America. Africa has been the one place they've just been able to come in and rape and pillage to their heart's content. And this is what's keeping the standard of living in the Western countries high enough that the people will tolerate their leadership. Now, if they can't deliver, if the leaders can't deliver, and they start spending all their money on defense, like in Europe, and cutting back the social safety nets, and people started suffering and realizing that, what's the point? We used to have it pretty good, now we don't. We need to get rid of these people. Well, you know what I'm saying? If they can suck the blood of Africa, then maybe they can throw a few crumbs to their own people and keep them at least from rebelling. So, I mean, that's sort of like why Eritrea is the threat of a good example, because one of the big areas of exploitation is mining. You know what I'm saying? And mining has been an area where they just suck the blood. I mean, energy. I mean, one time I wrote an article about how Nigeria was getting something like $8 a barrel. The oil was selling for $100 a barrel, and Nigeria was getting $8 a barrel, and having to import all their benzene, their gasoline, and their diesel fuel at $200 a barrel. So, I mean, it's like, okay, if Africa starts becoming self-sufficient and starts controlling their own resources and helping their own people, which looks like Burkina Faso is starting to do, then Africa...
Let me tell you this, even something more. I don't know if you followed it yesterday. I believe at the UN, there was an introduction of the draft resolution for, I believe, entitled International Day Against Unilateral Coercive Measures. And I believe Eritrea was the one that put out the measure. And I looked at all the countries that voted yes and no, and believe it or not, almost 90% of African countries supported the measure. I was actually shocked. So is this something maybe that's bringing Africa, Eritrea is maybe bringing everybody together? Do you think? Madagascar and Morocco are the only ones that I saw that were not.
There's definitely being some, conscious raising in Africa. I mean, people are starting to, the populations are starting to look for a way out of the mess, this debt servitude that the IMF and the World Bank used to keep them in neo-colonial bondage to the Western economies. And there's been a new crop of leaders that everybody's starting to say, hey, look, Niger can get out of this. Mali can get out of this. Burkina Faso can get out of this. Why can't we? Even Ghana, which has been a backbone of the U.S. Imperialism, and especially in West Africa, this look like the leaders are starting to flex their muscle, independence, and we'll see. I mean, this is not going to be an easy path. I mean, it's not going to be straightforward. There's going to be ups and downs, and the Americans are going to take some lickings, and they're going to make some defeats. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges ahead for Africa, but I think more and more Eritrea is starting to catch people's attention. So I think that's
Do you
really
feel like
positive.
the new administration here in the U.S. Not really being deeply involved in, in the past, as you know, everybody was using USAID and other organizations to infiltrate into other people's business, but with this administration, they're kind of trying to stay away from what's going on. Do you feel like maybe that could also be the jumpstart to some change?
Well, I of course I'm becoming increasingly impressed by the stupidity of President Trump and his incompetency of his administration. But because they're sort of like they're so muddled and so they got so many crises to deal with. It's sort of Africa's on the back burner, and they don't really have their focus on Africa like the Clinton administration. They had a lot of really dangerous people that knew all about Africa and who to suppress and who to persecute. And the Trump people are more like, well, we've got to deal with this, we've got to deal with that in Africa. Oh, these shithole countries, we'll worry about them later, right? So you know how it is with. That's sort of like, yeah, okay, opportunity, and opportunity to take advantage of some of the contradictions within this empire, So yeah, I think it's
The hands
positive.
of approach. The hands of approach kind of serves us even better than what was happening in the past. What I'm saying, I'm not saying that this administration is doing great things or whatever, but also in fairness, the economic situation in this country was not doing well. So with engaging more countries in Africa or other parts of the world could also benefit slowly what's going on in terms of development. So with that said, I think personally that the way that it is right now is probably better for us than it was in the past. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, of course. The standard of living of the Eritrean people. They're getting electricity in Asmara. When we first arrived there was some, and then it just the electric plants in Hergigo just died because they were old. They were old when they bought them or given them. Actually, they didn't buy them, and so there was. There's still. They don't have electric 24/7, but it's getting better. The water situation's been getting better. So life is, and especially now with the mining industry beginning to kick in and provide some badly needed foreign currency to develop the economic infrastructure and, like I say, education and healthcare and other things. Housing, we're going to start seeing more, increasing. The lives of the Eritrean people are going to get better. Now, it's been getting better in the countryside. I remember when we first came to Eritrea to get out to my wife's village. It was like 4-wheel drive, and it was pretty tough. The roads are bad, and then there's a road, and the buses are getting there now, and people can take their surplus and go in and sell it. And it's like there's a school and water well and solar power, and all of a sudden these people that were using cooking lights with kerosene and lamba and and now they have electric lights. Now they have water, clean drinking water. They don't have to carry water kilometers with a donkey, and life in the villages, which has been the priority for the Eritrean government, has changed dramatically. Now, people in Asmara, it hasn't changed. It's like, oh, our internet's real slow. Okay, yeah, internet's real slow, but hey, people are getting clean drinking water. People are getting.
Well, the government is always focusing on the basic necessities of life, the schools, the waters, the food.
The people that are the worst off are the
education.
priority. The worst off are the priority. You always start with the people at the bottom, and you help them first. And that's been what Eritrea is, the promise that Shabia made to the Eritrean people. And that's why when you talk to the Eritrean people, especially in the countryside, they say Shabia kept its promise.
Right. But the sanctions also didn't help either for a long time to turn and to change all the systems that have been sitting there for years. It could have been done through fair negotiations, but they really wanted to destroy Eritrea to the point where it cannot function anymore. And so the sanctions have really derailed and delayed a lot of our success. But nonetheless, Eritrea keeps on moving, like the camel keeps on marching. The dogs keep barking, but we're moving. We're moving. So with that said, though, what do you think would have been if the sanctions were not a part of Eritrea's challenges?
Well, there's still sanctions against Eritrea. You can't wire money in and out of the country. Eritrea is banned from the SWIFT system. So, it's like, even carrying cash out of the country, the U.S. has put money laundering restrictions. You can't even take just so much U.S. dollars out of Eritrea that you could get your money confiscated and thrown in jail.
Right.
I mean, this is a sort of reality that the U.S. unofficial sanctions or unknown sanctions are still being imposed upon Eritrea because the American government and the Western countries don't want the threat of a good example to succeed. So
Absolutely.
they're doing what they can. Okay, I mean, it's no coincidence that every operating mine in Eritrea now is owned and operated by the Chinese. I mean, the most effective exploration is going on with alpha exploration and outsiders, but it comes to the new potash mine is going to be it's owned by the Chinese. I mean, so Eritrea has been faced with these crippling sanctions and had to go outside of the Western countries and work with China and other things. Now, on the other hand, getting too reliant. I think one thing you notice that Eritrea just doesn't rush into relationships with those big powers. Like, I mean, even Russia, Eritrea has been very cautious, and now you hear Russia gonna give weapons to the Abiy regime. So I mean, good reason for Eritrea to be careful, right? I mean, so people think, well, how come they don't do this? How come they don't do that? Hey, somebody knows what they're doing. I mean, Isaiah's been this his whole life, and they're looking down, not just one step down the road, but they're looking, 10, 20 years down the road, what they've got to do. So I mean,
it's great that it's coming from you because you lived there, you witnessed how the country functions, and also I look at the fact that Eritrea has become has been emboldened with as a sanction-proof nation because the people keep on going. The people keep on going. Even recently, if you remember, a few days ago, they had this ban on travel. And you know how many people called me to say, "Oh, your country's on a ban list," but it doesn't affect us in any way. As a matter of fact, it serves us better.
Nothing new, really.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing new. And the funny part about it is actually benefits us because a lot of Ethiopians, especially recently, have been using Eritrean cards to come here into the West using fake IDs.
And now they're going to ban Ethiopians too.
Yeah. So with that said, I'm so proud of the nation and the people, and the struggles that we go through is not easy every day. We are affected by it too in the diaspora, but we continue to move on in the right direction, and we continue to leave a better nation for our future generations. And so that's the main.
One example of how the diaspora is like, for example, the brother that's introducing coconuts to Eritrea. That's something I wanted to do. One of the first things I did when I came to Eritrea back in 2006, because I grew up in Hawaii, and coconuts are part of our life, and that's the other thing that the guy says he's looking into is bringing in breadfruit to Eritrea. I mean, breadfruit is a staple, very healthy staple. It grows on a tree up to a kilo or more, and it bears fruit all year round. It's like a potato that grows on a tree. Okay, people can put it in their yard and water it. It grows in conditions like Eritrea. It just needs water. So I mean, this is something introducing that diaspora can play a role in introducing and really making a change in people's life. I mean, bringing in these high quality potatoes has made a big deal. Potatoes are very productive. They produce a lot of very positive food starch. And for growing potatoes is something that raises the people's, nutrition input. Okay, so breadfruit's another thing. I mean, it's like, man, people reach us like breadfruit, huh? Breadfruit is something Eritreans are going to like. I mean, just like sweet potato. When I first got to Eritrea, sweet potato was something like, what? What's that? And, now it's like, okay, sweet potato's in Shuk. It's in the market. And people are starting to realize sweet potato is pretty tasty. Well, breadfruit's more like potato than sweet potato. It's not that sweet, right? But it's a complex carbohydrate, and it's really healthy. And it grows on a tree. You don't have to go out and dig it up and replant it. You just make water and keep harvesting it. And go to places in the South Pacific like Fiji and everywhere. Every family has at least one or two breadfruit trees in their yard. When the kids are hungry, you go out and pull a breadfruit off the tree and take it in and boil it and slice it up and make. There's so many different ways to cook it. So I mean, so that's like diaspora is playing a role in all of that. See what I'm saying? Even like I was pushing people like, hey, what about macadamia nuts? I mean, the Eritrean climate's perfect for macadamia nuts. Macadamia nuts come from Australia, like where eucalyptus comes from. The drought resistance, it's a very healthy seed nut. The seed produces a cooking oil, a vegetable oil that's high in good cholesterol and low and bad cholesterol. It's excellent in salads and cooking. And even the shells after you crack it make excellent charcoal, faham. You don't have to use trees, cut trees down to make faham. And on top of that, it's drought resistant. It's from Australia. It grows really well in very sunny, hot weather, and it doesn't have to have water every day. So, I mean, macadamia nuts potential that the diaspora can work on, you see? I mean, even fishing. I mean, that's kind of a sore point with me because I spent years trying to get, you know, sustainable fishing started in aquaculture and mariculture, shellfish starting in Eritrea. And it was fashilu, but, you know, we did a lot of research. We had a lot of experience, and there's a great potential there. So, I mean, they talk about, you know, big trawlers coming to Eritrea, Japanese and others, and it's sort of scary to tell you the truth because trawlers take the mature fish that lay the eggs, and trawlers have a history of doing environmental havoc and destruction. So there's other sustainable practices that Eritrea can do that can produce a lot of very healthy fish, and especially for Eritrean children. The studies show that children that have at least a half a kilo of fish a week with their omega-3 fatty acids have higher intelligence.
Yes.
It's a brain food. So, I mean, if we could set up if the diaspora could come in and set up like a frozen patty that, you know, when you go to Expo in Eritrea every summer, you know, they have these they have fish sandwiches. It's basically frozen fish. And we could do that. We could distribute frozen fish out to the schools. They could take it and heat it up and feed it to the kids twice a week and raise the intelligence levels of Eritrean kids dramatically just for us making sure that they have fish to eat twice a week. I mean, that's something the diaspora could do because there's a lot of fish out there, and we could not only harvest it from the Red Sea, we could grow it in the Red Sea because Eritrea's got some of the warmest water in the world, and the warmer the water, the higher the fish marine metabolism. In other words, the warm water of the Red Sea promotes fast marine growth. So fish in the warm waters and shellfish in the warm waters grow faster than almost anywhere else in the world. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been like the Salam restaurant in Massawa, like at the end of the hot season.
Yeah.
Well, when end of the hot season, when there are all these mullet, right? Arabi, they call them mullet.
Mm-hmm.
You can harvest these mullet. They'll cook them in the mullet's not in the United States. In other words, it's not looked at as a premium fish, but at the end of the hot weather, when the fish they're so fat because there's so much algae for them to eat. Mullet's a filter feeder that when you cook them on a fire, the fat drips off the fish like a hamburger. That's how rich in fat the fish is. Mm. So, I mean, it's like, whoa, I've never seen mullet do that. And I grew up in Hawaii eating mullet. I've never seen mullet drip fat into the fire. Well, Eritrean mullet, because that's how rich the environment is. Okay, so all of these things can be done. I mean, we can use black soldier fly to feed groupers. We can raise groupers without having to be completely self-sufficient by using black soldier fly, which has been developed. I mean, South Africa has a factory produces 5,000 tons of black soldier fly feed every year to feed, you know, not only fish, but chickens and other animals. So this can be done with basically scraps and waste products and grow the larvae from the black soldier fly and use them to feed animals and fish. So, I mean, this is like another thing that the diaspora can contribute. You know, research this and come to Eritrea and start up and not just a major projects, but even little backyard projects. People can take their scraps, waste from their house and go chicken feed their chickens with it without having to buy chicken feed. You can use this, make your own chicken feed. So, I mean, this is like, there's a lot of projects to the diaspora, you know, but of course, like one of my pet projects was the marine resources, which at this point, I don't know what was really going on, but I hope there's going to be some developments.
Well, there's 2025. There's a new guideline that has come out. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but there more things are going to be opening up. You know, obviously with the sanctions and other problems that we've had, you know, developing infrastructure was always one of the issues we've always had as well.
You know, we've heard that from people inside Eritrea that there was going to be a Shabia PFDJ party congress. Mm-hmm. So That should
Hopefully,
be,
some new things are going to come out. Yes, this
yeah, that should
2025
be
looking.
opening the door for a lot of new changes.
Right.
You know, because the one thing, you can't do change fast because we got too many enemies. On the
Right.
other hand, they do need changes because a lot of the people in the leadership are getting old. We need some young blood in there with energy and intelligent, you know, smart kids. Got young people that can get out there and work hard and with drive and energy and develop the country. So, you know, hopefully this Congress is going to happen, and hopefully it's going to make some big changes.
Absolutely. So, in your assessment, in terms of the gradual development that's been going on over the last 3-4 decades in Eritrea, do you feel like it's going to expedite even more as things change now? The world's changing. With that, also new technology. You know, also, you know, with the media, we're talking earlier, a lot of AI, a lot of confusion being created. You know, making someone look like they're not, that kind of thing. All that. How do you think all that new technology plays in what Eritrea will do, and how do we prepare for something like that?
Well, like I said, there's going to be some serious developing a serious infusion of hard cash, foreign currency into the Eritrean economy through the government. So for the mining industry, so that's a very positive thing. In this next 2 years, you're going to see some big changes taking place with the Embadurho mine coming online for copper, as well as significant amounts of gold, and then the potash mine in Danakalia. So that's going to make a big difference, right? And that's going to be a lot of money coming in the Eritrean government can use to develop the country. So, you know, I see that's a positive thing. But, you know, the Eritrean people right now, from our take, what, you know, my wife was there not too long ago, it's like people are kind of scared about this. Things are unstable with Ethiopia. And that's why, you know, things are falling apart in Ethiopia. And where this is going to go, I mean, that's a great big neighbor right next door. And of course, you know, there's big breakthroughs in friendship with the Tigrayan people. And I think Abiy Ahmed's kind of freaking out that he doesn't have the control of the border anymore with Ethiopia and Eritrea. But, you know, this is, Eritrean people themselves are sort of very concerned. I mean, and in the diaspora, it's sort of reflected in the diaspora, you know, what's going to happen. They're, you know, slow to want to get on board with investing in the country because of this problems with their neighbors. I mean, you know, Sudan's still raging civil war, and Somalia is not exactly stable, and Ethiopia is on the verge of, you know, disintegrating into new states. So, I mean, it's hard to blame the Eritrean people for being a little anxious about the future. On the other hand, I think if you look at the economic development the government's promoting with mining and other things, oof, you know, I mean.
So how do you look at the geopolitics of, first we'll go to talk a little bit about Eritrea and the friends it's made, for example, working with the likes of China in terms of development. I'm talking about military or whatever, but development wise, Saudi Arabia being next door neighbor and them, you know, being into this new huge development phase. You know, again with Egypt and all these countries, and forgetting all the negatives, you know, that's happening in Ethiopia. Do you think all the other relationships and solidarity and relationships that we built, do you think that will be affected by what's going on with our neighbors? Or, I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, you know, first of all, once the Sudan civil war is resolved, I mean, once the UAE-backed forces are driven out of the country and peace is reestablished, then, okay, then Eritrea can start trading. I mean, Eritrea used to have significant economic ties with Sudan, and that's all gone because there's no economy in Sudan anymore. There's a war raging. So that's going to help Eritrea, right? And if the UAE can be isolated and basically kept out of creating havoc in Horn of Africa, then, you know, Somalia will help hopefully stabilize, right? And again, the Somalis, you know, potential trading partners of Eritrea. So, and of course, Ethiopia. If we can resolve this problem with Abiy Ahmed and bring peace to Ethiopia, the potential for trade with Ethiopia and development is great. So, I mean, Eritrea can begin using that to develop Eritrea. I mean, if Ethiopia's open up Assab port for Ethiopian to come in and bring their goods and import from, then you know, that's going to be a big benefit. So there's a lot of things that with getting rid of Abiy Ahmed, which could happen within a few months.
All right. It's a very perplexed issue, though, and I think that you know, while you're saying the whole Ethiopia situation needs to change. At the same time, do you, like one of the things that in the Eritrean charter, the EPLF and the PFDJ charter, is regional integration is one of the things that they were that was put in out of the 6 charters, right? And we are at that phase right now. We are at that part of the regional integration and making peace, development, and going forward. We are having a little difficult time at the moment, but what makes it easy for Eritrea is what I'm asking, to continue on doing what it's doing, what it's been doing, because nonetheless we've already passed the hard part, but we're going to be going forward, and in order for us to develop even at a higher level, we're going to have obstacles like this one. So what makes you, give me your opinion on that?
Well, it boils down to 2 words. Those 2 words are Isaias Afwerki. I mean, that's why I've been pushing this book by Michel Colon, this Interviews with Isaias. I mean, I've learned so much just from those, and I'm like, okay, bring on the next one. Bring on the next one. Come on. Because, Isaias has been this since he was like a teenager, and he's got all this knowledge and brilliance, and he's been leading the way, not just for Eritrea, but for the rest of the Horn for a long time. So, with Isaias there's great hope for not just Eritrea, but for the rest of the Horn of Africa at least. So, that's why I think is a key, is that Isaias got a plan. And once he starts explaining that to us, at least in a historical concept, through a series of interviews like this first book that comes out, then, everybody's going to start getting a better picture. Because, Shabi has been kind of very secretive and very closed about what's the past and what's, it's sort of like the general concepts are there, but specifics. And Isaias is starting to bring those specifics to clarity. So with that, I mean, I'm hoping, I've been told that Elias Amari is in control of the distribution rights in the United States outside of Europe. And come on, everybody chip in and help Elias get this book sold at the conventions this summer, and even get a second run.
No, believe me, it's going to go out. A lot of people are looking for it already. I
understand he's bought 1,000 copies. 1,000 copies should go at the first day or 2 in the convention. At the Eritrean festival, right? We need to get that book, not just the Eritrean community. That book needs to get out into the hands of anybody that's progressive, and especially anybody with interest in Africa. And Eritreans have to push that. So that's why I'm hoping that Elias Amadi is going to rise to the challenge and really get that book out there and get the word around to everybody, because it's not an easy sell. Believe me,
it's being sold online as well.
It's not an easy sell.
Yeah, it's being sold online as well. So I think you can also get it online. I don't know if they stopped it, but I looked into it a few weeks ago and I saw it link online on there. But we'll look into it and discuss it more. But with that said, I want to bring Metkel. Why you been so quiet? If you have any questions or suggestions, you want to talk to Mr. Thomas Mountain, our guest, I'll give you the mic. And with that, in Tigrinya, ክቡራት ሰማዕትና በዚ በእንግሊሽና ጌርናዮ ዘለና እዚ ምልዛብ ብሓፂሩ እቲ ዝበሎ ኩሉ ቀሲልኩም ንህር ሰሚዕኹሞ ብዛዕባ ኩነታት ናይ ኤርትራን እዚ ዘጋጥም ዘሎ ኩነታት ኣብ ከባቢ ቀርኒ ኣፍሪካን ኣብ ካልእ ኩሉ ዓለማዊ ፅቡቅ ገይሩ ብፃይና ቶማስ ማውንተን ረዲኡና ኣሎ ቀሲልኩም ስምዕዎ ምስኡ ከዓ ብፃይ መትከል እንድሕር ክትዛረብ ደሊኻሲ ማይክሮፎን ንኣኸበካ ማለት እዩ
No, thank you. The reason I'm not saying anything is because Thomas is touching all the points, and he's answering all the questions that I was prepared to ask. But I want to mention one thing. Bisrat Girmai and Mikhail, she asked you a question. And the question is, Mr. Thomas, I hope you will come to Eritrean NCEA conference in California. That would be very nice. That's, I think it seems like invitation. Another thing, Yeah, macadamian. I was looking into it because there is a lot of macadamian in Southeast Asia, and mahogany trees, which it is really good in Eritrea. It should be good in Eritrea with the in addition to coconut, cocoa. What do you think about the seaweed? That's another thing. But before I go before I let you answer that, I will take you back to what Henry Kissinger said in 1974. Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control the whole continents. Who control the money can control the world. So this is the agenda of the imperialism or the colonialism or neo-colonialism in general. So from this point, Eritrea focused on agriculture, mining, infrastructure without heavy reliance on foreign loan. Can this approach be scaled across Africa, or does it require a strong central governance like Eritrea? That's the question for you. Thank you.
Well,
Brilliant.
it does require a strong central. His leadership is the key. Okay, without leadership, you could just have chaos. You have to have a politically conscious, honest, and hardworking, far-sighted leadership. And Eritrea has had that with Isaias Afwerki. And the other African countries, hopefully the Sahel states, at least in Burkina Faso, are looking like some of their leaders are potential, right? So, hopefully in Ethiopia, that's going to be the case. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that, one other thing Henry Kissinger so famously said was, to be enemies with the United States is dangerous. To be friends is deadly. In other words, Eritreans all want to be like, yeah, why can't we be friends with the United States? Well, Henry Kissinger was the consigliere to the American mafia. And he says, to be enemies with the U.S. is dangerous. To be friends is deadly. Okay, so, I think that makes Shabia's past practices very understandable because people won't come, they're fighting with America all the time. Yeah, right. Shabia knows America. Look at this they're doing to Iran now. So I'm saying it's like, okay. With that said, it's like it's not easy developing Africa. There's not one size fits all. Every country has to develop their own particular conditions and their own resources and their own people and their own contradictions. And you've got a lot of problems with countries that have been basically pasted together by the imperialists, So you've got countries that are, in the midst of continuing ethnic problems. You look at Mozambique. They've got a civil war going on there with these jihadists in the north, and it's basically tribally based. And so you've got a lot of problems with tribalism in Africa. So there's none of this is easy. None of this is going to come about fast. And but there is, Eritrea is a role model, and if we can promote this role model into the rest of Africa, then the rest of Africans can start catching on. One country that definitely should be really studying Eritrea is the Kenyan people, because man, they need this sort of leadership like Eritrea is providing, but they just don't know. And I don't see anybody really promoting, Eritrea in Kenya effectively. The government people are trying, but they have a conference on, and they come in, they talk about Malcolm X. Oh my God. In Kenya, our neighbor, Malcolm X been dead, 60 years? And we got a real life revolutionary leader that the Kenyan people should all be looking up to and saying, hey, they do it this way. Maybe we can do something like that too. No, nobody's promoting Isaias in Eritrea and Kenya. Not that I see, other than what the government's trying to do. So, it's like, okay, Friends of Eritrea has got a lot of work to do to, to educate the African people on the threat of a good example.
It's funny you say that because one of the problems also we've faced over the years in terms of media is the propagandas against President Isaias was so immersed. I mean, so deep that people, even the normal, those who find out that he's not what he is, go, well, you know what? For so many years, we heard this guy was the dictator and this and that. And so it's kind of falls into a category of not knowing. But when they find out, they're like, wow, you know? And so for me, I think the work, telling, and that's the thing about Shabia, also EPLF, and the culture of the Eritrean people in general is not to boast about yourself. But I think it's time now with new media coming in to tell our stories. That's what Alam Seged was saying the other day. I hope more Eritreans are going to tell their stories. Our friend Emmanuel Beida has written a book about, Eritrea's struggle is long, but the struggle is long, but we'll always win. So in terms of telling our stories, we really have to tell our stories. We got to tell the story of our leaders, including President Isaias Afwerki, and the movement and how it got to where it is and where it's headed to. And, I think that is one of the problems I see personally. And I hope to see more young people writing stories about Eritrea.
Well, and this book that Michelle Colon's come out, Interviews with Isaias, I think this is something that the Eritrean diaspora really has to work hard in promoting, because man, that's the best way. It's a good book. I mean, he gets in there, it makes Isaias very human and talks about things in a very down-to-earth way. And I think, and it's in English. So I think there's a lot of potential in that book that Eritreans outside have really got to take up and promote, because by promoting Isaias, you're promoting Eritrea. And by promoting Eritrea, you're promoting the thread of a good example for the rest of Africa. So, hey, listen, I got a granddaughter's birthday today, so I'm going to have to say goodbye to you guys.
Yeah, I think we're about done. Matkal, I think this is it. If you have any questions, but Solo, if you want to play that video one more time for the audience, we can end it with that. It's the Martyrs Day week. We want to give you the last words for the Martyrs Day, Thomas, and we will let you go to your personal event. So anything about Martyrs Day?
Well, Martyrs Day is a very solemn occasion in Eritrea. Nobody's even supposed to drink. Can't buy any alcohol, not even supposed to drink alcohol. It's a day that we're supposed to reflect on the ultimate sacrifice that was made, without which there would be no Eritrea today. So I think the Martyrs Day is, it's like one of those very important days when the Eritrean psyche, and then the Eritrean consciousness, and the Eritrean character. So with that said, everybody burn a candle in front of your picture, because every Eritrean family seems to have a martyr. So we as everybody else.
Thank you, Thomas. We appreciate you. Metka will give you the last word also with that. بتግርኛ ክቡራት ሰማዕትና ሎሚ መደብና ብእንግሊሽ ነይሩ ግን ከም ትፈልጥዎ ቶማስ ፅቡቅ ገይሩ ኣረዲኡና እዩ እዛ ደርፊ እዚኣ ካ ብእንግሊሽ ተፃሒፋ ዘላ 24 hours a day 7 days a week 24 ሰዓት ብመዓልቲ 7 መዓልቲ ብሰሙን ትብል ግጥሚ ተፃሒፋ ካብኡ ተበጊሳ ዝወፀት ደርፊ ስለ ዝኾነት ብእንግሊሽ ንኩልኻትኩም ንዕድመኩም በዚኣ ጌርና ነዛዝማ ግን ቅድሚኡ ንመትከል ዕድል ክህቦ መትከል ናይ መወዳእታ and Thomas, thank you very much and then we'll play the music and we'll end it with that. Go ahead, Matkel.
Well, all I want to say is on behalf of the listeners, I want to say thank you, Thomas, and on behalf of all of us, you need to wish your granddaughter happy birthday from us. Other than that, I hope we can collaborate another discussion like this, and we really appreciate you as always, and thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Next time you're supposed to call me Aboy Thomas.
Aboy Thomas, huh?
That's right, Thomas is CD. I'm Aboy Thomas.
Yeah, but you don't even know how old I am. Maybe I'm older than you.
You can still, even I call other old people Aboy. Old people are supposed to call Aboy, right?
Aboy Thomas then. From now onward, it's going to be Aboy Thomas.
No, don't be Siddi. Call me Aboy Thomas, okay?
Thank you.
Well, Charles, thank you. Let's end it with a song and appreciate you, everybody. Go ahead, Solo, Tadar for this author.
Eritrea, our homeland, a beacon of light. Brave men and women fighting for a cause. They stood tall and proud, demanding their applause. 24 hours a day, every single week, for justice and truth. It's our freedom they seek. With courage in their hearts, they took a stand for a land that's free. United we band. Eritrea, oh home of the brave. Your spirit lives on in the hearts that you save. Shining like gold, you're our blessing divine. May we honor your martyrs, their legacy full shine. In 1991, freedom fighters rose, liberating our land from every wound and woes. They gave it all, didn't flinch, didn't shake. With blood on the ground for our freedom's sake. Oh, the tears that were shed, the dreams that they had, fighting for the dignity that we all should be glad. From the hills to the valleys, their names echo true in the story of our people, they'll always live through. Eritrea, oh home of the brave. Your spirit lives on in the hearts that you save. Shining like gold, you're our blessing divine. We honor your martyrs, their legacy for eyes. Among nations of the world, you stand so tall. For justice and truth, you answer the call. In the struggle for peace, we won't forget. To the heroes we lost, we owe this debt. 24/7, your memory we keep. In the depth of our hearts, for you we will weep. With love and with honor, we'll carry the flame. Eritrea, our hope, will forever proclaim. Eritrea, oh home of the brave. Your spirit lives on in the hearts that you save.
amol gere ma bina kadamo bina hal madafina ma bina inabale abaya ambile sehedai raba inniki sai muda ma bina inabale abaya